Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me again. Semi-formal letters is what this video is going to focus on. Before you proceed, please ensure you subscribe, and if you haven't watched the previous videos, please ensure you do, especially if you are preparing for a test. Don't miss out. So as I said, we're going to talk about semi-formal letters, specifically in the context of IELTS writing. Let's dive right in. First off, this is a letter that is written in a slightly less formal tone than a formal letter, but still maintains a professional and respectful tone. Semi-formal letters are commonly used in business and professional settings, as well as academic and personal contexts. Now, one of the most crucial aspects of IELTS letter writing is undoubtedly deciding on the correct tone of your letter. There are in fact two distinct options, that is formal and informal. So it's either you are formal or informal. If unfortunately you choose the incorrect tone, you might receive a low score in task achievement, which contributes to a substantial 25% of your overall mark. Having said that, let's ensure you get it right in the first place. Right, now obviously the tone of the letter is primarily determined by the individual you are addressing. However, there are a few key points that apply to both formal and informal letters, allowing you to maintain a consistent style for any given purpose. So we use a formal tone to recipients we may not know or may not know very well, while an informal tone is a tone you use when you're addressing your friends. Using a different language and a distinct style of writing is essential depending on whom you are addressing. Therefore, always follow this rule. In the question that contains the term friend, opt for an informal language choice. If the question does not contain the term, then opt for a more formal language choice. The only exception is if the letter is to a close family member, when you would also use an informal tone, but these are not common. Occasionally, students get confused by a letter that is to a friend but of a serious nature, such as informing them of a sad event. You would still use an informal tone but choose an appropriate language to fit in the situation. Please note that tone is never determined by the topic of the letter but the recipient of the letter. So, which tone should we use while writing a semi-formal letter? My advice is to use only a formal or informal tone as appropriate. Here is the point. You don't have to mix both tones in a single letter. Please decide which tone you are going to use depending on the recipient of your letter. Well, I believe in keeping things as simple as possible, and having a third style option is just an added complication and very unnecessary. I know you could argue for the use of a semi-formal tone when writing to your colleague at work or your manager whom you are friendly with. However, for your IELTS letter writing, just assume that you are not friends and write a letter in a professional style, that is, in a formal tone. I hope that's clear enough. Another situation that can be a bit confusing is when you're writing to a neighbor. Again, just assume that you do not know them very well and keep the letter formal. If you follow the rule of only writing an informal letter when the question contains the word friend, you will be fine. Right, the format still maintains. We are going to use the same format in all our letters. Only the content of the letter changes, but the format maintains. Remember, addresses are not important in this part of writing. Avoid them completely. They're not going to earn you any single mark. Now, the first part, we said it contains the salutation part, that is the greeting. So, of course, you have a knowledge of the person you are addressing. It could be your neighbor, it could be your colleague at work, it could be your teacher, which automatically means you're going to address them by their name. So, for instance, you can say, Dear Mr. John, Dear Miss Sidika, Dear Mr. Vincent, etc. Having done with the first part, which is the salutation part, you move to the second part, which is writing the purpose of the letter. As I said earlier, you don't have to write the heading then underline it. It's not necessary in this part of writing. Just write it in a paragraph form, introducing the purpose of your letter clearly enough. So just ensure you read and understand the question very well for you to understand the purpose of your letter. And that's it for the second part of our letter. Now, the third part of our letter is obviously the first paragraph of the body. We have 3 bullet points that are supposed to be discussed, and remember, each bullet point must be discussed in its own paragraph. So immediately after the 2 parts, that is the salutation and the purpose of our letter, it's when we start discussing the 3 bullet points we have been given. To be safe, please ensure you focus on the subject matter. Only write what you've been told to write about. And that brings us to the last part of our letter, which is signing off, having completely discussed the 3 bullet points we have been given to discuss about. And don't forget to use the correct language, employ the appropriate use of vocabulary, and be sure to write nothing less than 150 words. Be grammatical. In other words, please ensure you know the marking criteria. Having said that, let's have a look at this question. You are absent from an important event held by the company you work for. Write a letter to your manager. In your letter, apologize for the absence and explain the reasoning. Secondly, explain why you had to be at the other event. And finally, explain what you will do to catch up. Write at least 150 words. And as always, you do not need any addresses. So let's assume your manager's surname is Vincent. So you're writing a letter to Mr. Vincent. So dear Mr. Vincent is the first part of the letter. That is the salutation part. We're done with the salutation part. Let's move on to the second part, which is writing the purpose of the letter. If you go back to the very first sentence of your letter, you were absent from an important event held by the company you work for. And that is exactly where we're going to find the purpose of our letter. So let's proceed. I am writing in regard to my absence from the annual company business meeting held last week. As always, you don't make it too detailed. As long as you have highlighted the purpose of your letter, we can then comfortably move to address the bullet points we were given. The first one, apologize for the absence and explain the reasoning. So let's try it out. First off, I would like to formally apologize for not being able to attend the business meeting. I recognize the importance of the event, especially in terms of networking and growing as a team. However, my mother had an invasive spinal surgery last weekend, and I spent the last week taking care of her at home. And that's it for that paragraph. We have apologized for the absence and explained the reason behind the absence. So let's move to the second bullet point, where we are told to explain why you had to be at the other event. And here is our response. While the surgery was not life-threatening, it was not a routine procedure either. My mother required constant assistance and faces a long road to recovery. Since I'm the only child, my mother relied on me during this difficult recovery period, and my presence was a necessary part of her well-being. And that's it for that paragraph. So let's move to the final part of the body of our letter. So explain what you will do to catch up. That is the question. So the paragraph expects you to explain what you are going to do. Of course, you missed the meeting, so you are going to give an explanation of what plans you have in order to catch up with the rest of the team. Here is the response. In order to catch up on what was covered during the event, I have scheduled a meeting with Mr. John from the finance department. After meeting with Mr. John, I'm confident that I will be brought up to speed with the rest of the team and ready to start working. Now we are done with, of course, the hardest part of the letter, writing the body. And now we have to finalize by signing up. So thank you for your understanding. Yours sincerely. Then you write your name down there. We are done. The letter is complete. Now this is the time. If you have extra time, please go through your work, proofread, correct any grammatical error you might have made, among other mistakes that can be made while writing. Transition words are highlighted in red, advanced grammar structures highlighted in green, and topic vocabulary highlighted in blue. Thank you for staying with me till this end. I believe you've already subscribed. Remember to give us a big thumbs up.